What's up, guys? It's Tony here. Welcome back to Man Cave Studios. I should probably explain, like last time, first of all, why I'm showing you soccer highlights. And it's this time there's a specific reason. It's because a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today, I assume, is going to be about soccer and Major League Soccer in particular, which is a league that you're seeing. So today, we're going to be talking about television and sports. First, I'm going to talk, I guess, about each of them separately, and then I'll just kind of combine it and give some of my thoughts. So, first, let's talk a little bit about television. In recent years, there has been a huge shift away from cable television called cord cutting. People instead are switching to watching TV through streaming services like Netflix and Peacock, HBO, things like that. There are still TV shows that you can watch live on TV, but most of the big shows anymore are only available on streaming services. For example, if you want to watch reruns of, I don't know, any comedy show from the 2010s, early 2010s, Parks and Recreation, you can watch on Peacock. Community, which is my favorite show, you can watch on Netflix. The Office, you can watch on Peacock Premium, which you have to pay additional money for. But out of all those three shows, the only one that you can ever see on TV is The Office. And that's because that's the most popular of the three. If you want to watch Community reruns or Parks and Recreation reruns, you can. You have to go to a streaming service to watch it. It's not part of your cable package. You have to pay extra. If you want to watch some sporting events, most of the time now you have to pay extra to watch additional sporting events that aren't necessarily on TV. Some markets, if you don't want to watch the home team, or even, I should say, in some markets, if you want to watch the home team, you can't even have a cable plan that would pay for that. Like, you would have to, I think the New Jersey Devils or one of the New York, New Jersey teams has a problem now where you can't get the network with your cable provider that streams the games, that shows the games on TV. So you have to buy an additional subscription in order to get it. And there are, of course, blackouts. And blackouts are a big thing with sports in particular, because you can't watch certain teams in certain areas. But in general, like, it's kind of reflected a shift towards streaming services and away from conventional television. But at the same time, it's not at the point yet where you can give up your cable package in favor of just buying individual streaming services. There are things like YouTube TV that make it easier to get everything in one place, which YouTube TV is like what Dish used to be. Like, you can get any channel that you want. This was before streaming. You could get anything that you want on TV. You just have to pay for those specific channels. You don't get a bunch of channels that you don't want. You just get the channels that you do want. And you pay for those channels without having to pay for all the extras. So as opposed to like Xfinity or Verizon Fios, where you're paying for cable. You're paying for everything. With Dish, you were paying for like ESPN, ABC, whatever, NBC, whatever you would want to watch. YouTube TV is basically like the same thing, but with streaming services and cable networks. From what I've heard, I haven't had YouTube TV yet. But from what I've researched on them, that's basically what YouTube TV is. It's like an aggregator. So with that being said, we'll talk about television. Let's talk a little bit about sports. Back in the day, so to speak, it cost less money to go to a baseball game, or we'll just keep it at baseball for now. We'll just stick with the 50s and earlier. it costs less money to attend a baseball game than it did to whatever drive. I mean, obviously there weren't as many cars, but to drive out like 20 miles, fill your car up with gas, right? I might be exaggerating a little bit there, but it was cheap. The point I'm trying to make is it was cheap to go to a baseball game. It was $1 or less for a ticket. There wasn't any of this VIP upgrade stuff. Like, sure, there were probably people that had VIP seats, but a lot of it was just general admission. You weren't like, you know, you go in the stadium, you sit in your seat, you watch a game, and you go home. You wouldn't have to like check your bank account to see if you had enough money to go to a game. You had pocket change that you could use on a baseball ticket. We don't have that anymore. There was a study done that was just released today that said the average cost for a family of four to attend a baseball game was somewhere in the hundreds of dollars range. Hundreds of dollars for a family of four to watch a baseball game. And that's true. The cheapest ticket at Citizens Bank Park, and I'm talking about the nosebleeds, $17. Multiply that by 4, you got around, what's that, like $67, somewhere around there? I don't know. I'm bad at math. I might be wrong. Let me check real quick. 17 times 4, $68. All right, close enough. $68 to get in the door. $20 if you want to park. So that's already up to $88. Any concessions? That's additional. $88 minimum for a family of four to get into a ballpark. That's if you don't eat anything. That's if your seat is at the top of the stadium. For a little bit more, you can get a better seat. I think anywhere down the first baseline is like $40. So that's $160 for 4 people. Plus $20 parking, that's $180. You want to get concessions? Hot dog is like $6 at Citizens Bank Park. You get 4 hot dogs, that's $24. 4 bottles of water, that's what, an additional 2, 3 extra? We'll just say 2. That's $8 extra dollars. So $32 on top of $180, you're paying over $200 for a family of 4 to go to a baseball game. One baseball game. Just one. And that's why, if you look at places like Camden Yards, or Tropicana Field, or even Citizens Bank Park, there are many empty seats. Especially if you look all the way up at the top. Because no one's going to pay $17 to sit in nosebleeds. Unless you're going by yourself, I would do that because I would go by myself. I like going to baseball games by myself. I like going to games with my family, but when my family doesn't want to go to a game, I'll go by myself. I don't need anybody else to go to a game. If I really wanted to see one. $17. That's cheap for one person. When you're paying for 4 people, absolutely not. $68 to sit in nosebleeds. So no one's going to games. People are watching games on TV, which is why it's really good to be part of that broadcast production staff as opposed to game day staff at this point, because people still want to sit down and watch games. For now, anyway. Before, things start shifting more towards social media. But the point is, people are watching games at home. People aren't watching games at the ballpark or at any field. Like Eagles tickets. Do you know how expensive Eagles tickets are? It's at least $100 for a good seat to a game. One game. 3 hours. You're paying $33 to sit in a seat for an hour with an imperfect view when you could just sit at home and watch the same thing Or if you want to feel the atmosphere, just go to a bar. Any bar in the Philadelphia region. The day of an Eagles game. You'll feel that energy. You also have a good view of the game. Because it's on TV and they know what they're doing. So let's talk about how these two relate. Because sports are becoming more of a TV program than a sit at the ballpark or sit at the field and watch thing, which, we've kind of become accustomed to. In the last few years, it's been more about, let's sit down every night at 7 o'clock and watch the Phillies game. Or watch a Flyers game or something. If you live in the Philly region, I'm just kind of comparing my experience. It's not so much, hey, you want to go to a Phillies game tonight and spend $80 at least? No. It's, let's watch this game on TV. You can watch it at your house. You can go to a bar and watch it. You could go to a restaurant and watch it. And sports have been suffering a little bit for it. Because ticket sales are where they make most of the revenue. Advertising is great, but ticket sales, above all else, are what matter for sports. And I don't understand what the business decisions behind making ticket prices higher are. Sure, if you want to bump up ticket prices for the games that are going to be popular no matter what, go ahead. Like the Phillies game that I went to that I vlogged earlier this summer. That's an example of that. But at the same time, if you're charging the same price or, similar price with a $17 minimum to sit in the ballpark for a Phillies versus Nationals game, you can't be upset when no one's in the stands. And so what they'll do, especially in Major League Baseball, is they won't pay their staff as much as they should. Now, there are a few things about television that are kind of changing with regards to sports. Like I kind of referenced before, things are moving more towards streaming and away from cable. So, what got me really angry this year was when, on Father's Day, the Phillies decided to put a game on Peacock. Exclusively on Peacock. On Father's Day. Now, I promise I'm not trying to be mean, but younger people know more about technology than older people do. So that's just disgusting in my opinion. You're going to try to force dads on Father's Day, who might even have like a tradition, and I think the reason behind it was because it's a tradition for, you and your dad to sit down and watch a Phillies game. Most people and their dad to sit down and watch a Phillies game on Father's Day. So let's put it on streaming services or a streaming service so that way we can try to attract attention to this. That's a really crappy thing to do. But they did it anyway, out of complete disregard. And I was furious at that. Of course, I didn't watch the game. I wouldn't have watched the game either way, even if I didn't have anything to do that day. And that was actually the day I went to a Union 2 match. But they're trying to move everything towards streaming, and it's too early for that. Because you're trying to force a generation that didn't grow up with streaming, a generation that grew up with cable television. You're trying to force them to hit a few extra buttons, pay a few extra dollars, and somehow be able to magically figure out where's a Phillies game on Father's Day. You should realize, past a certain age, people aren't on social media. People aren't going to open the Phillies or MLB app to see where the game is today. They're going to flip on NBC Sports Philadelphia. If it's not on NBC Sports Philadelphia, they hit the channel up button and it's on NBC Sports Philly Plus. They're not going to think, Let me look at my phone and see where the game is today. Let me open Peacock. No. Because they're not used to it. It's like the old expression, you can't teach a dog new tricks. If someone told me that every time I woke up, I had to, get out of my house. Like immediately, as soon as I wake up, I have to leave my house and go to, some restaurant. If I want to eat that day. I think this is a good example. If you took away ShopRite from people, where are people going to go? Or not just ShopRite, but like any supermarket. If you took away supermarkets from people, what do you think people are going to do? You think they're going to automatically think, oh, I should go to a restaurant? Every day? Really? Maybe on occasion. But you take away supermarkets from people that don't usually eat out, and they're going to have problems with it. So, the main point of all of this is that earlier this year, the MLS announced that they are switching to Apple TV going forward. The sport isn't going to be on cable. Now, you should realize a lot of people from my generation, more than any other generation, do not care about sports. MLS's target audience are people between the ages of 12 and 24. So yeah, they might have access to Apple TV, they might have access to streaming services. But who's going to take them to the games? You think the people with the most disposable income are people between the ages of 12 and 24? It's the older generations that have all the wealth. If you take the sport off TV and, you're a parent of a kid, the kid's going to see, and right now, like say the Phillies aren't on TV one night, but MLS soccer is. It's a sport. You'll watch it. It's right there. You're already paying for it. If it's not there, you're not going to watch it. You're going to watch something else. You're going to flip on MLB Network or one of those other services. One of those other stations, I mean. You're not going to go out of your way to Apple TV to look it up. To look up what Major League Soccer games are on. No one's going to do that. Except for people that are already MLS fans. But again, those are mostly kids. Those are mostly younger people. Especially with this generation. Like, our generation is growing up with superstars like Christian Pulisic and Brendan Aronson. Millennials grew up with Landon Donovan. Anyone before that didn't really care about soccer. Because it was all about football, basketball, baseball, hockey, the big four sports. And even some, I'm not saying everybody from my generation cares about soccer, but more people from my generation care about soccer than older generations. Because it was also my generation that was the first one to grow up with English Premier League. So a reason that sports are so popular still with people, the same sports, how you can crown champions every year and people don't get bored of it or old of it, is because of that nostalgia. People feel nostalgic about watching sports. And if you don't believe me, why do you watch football every Thanksgiving? Why don't you watch anything else that's on TV? Because it's about having watched football in the past, being nostalgic about watching football on Thanksgiving, watching football at that time of year in general. It's like if you move the NHL season, the one year that they did it was because of COVID, but any regular year, if you move the NHL season to over the summer, you're not nearly going to get the same support. Because it's not so much about the sport for most people, for most casual watchers, as it is watching it a certain time of year. If you move the Winter Classic to August, first of all, put the logistical issue aside, but it's not going to get as high of a rating. Because a lot of the reason that people watch the Winter Classic now is because of that nostalgia, because they've watched it in the past. Especially the younger generations. But if you're not giving people the opportunity to become nostalgic about the sport, if you're not putting it on TV, because the process is, you're going to watch a game on TV before you're going to go see one live. So, for example, like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Like, when you sit down at night and you look through the TV guide and there's no baseball on, there's no good baseball on, but there's soccer on. You turn to soccer, right? Or maybe, with the addition of streaming services, but only in rare instances and with younger groups would you turn on, like, a sports feature show. But in the absence of that, you're going to turn on whatever else is on cable. If soccer's on cable, sure, you might watch it, even if it's like a broadcast between, the Colorado Rapids and the Portland Timbers, and you live, like me, in Philly. You might not care about it, but it might get your interest a little bit up. You might be bored, but it'll at least draw you in. If the game's not on TV, nobody's going to watch it. Nobody except the current fans. So what do you think happens when the next generation comes along and soccer is completely absent from their lives? Because millennials don't care about MLS. MLS wasn't big until recently. It's Gen Z that cares about MLS. You're going to have gaps in certain generations. The kids of millennials first are not going to want to watch soccer. They're not going to want to watch the MLS. Because they're not going to grow up watching it on TV. They're going to grow up watching other things. And I guess you could say, like, that's fine because our target audience is just Gen Z. But Gen Z isn't paying to go to games. Gen Z are asking their parents if they can go to games. And their parents are people that might not want to pay for 100 different streaming services. Like mine. Mine don't want to pay for 100 different streaming services. We don't have any Apple products in my house. Why would we buy Apple TV? If we weren't season ticket holders, we wouldn't even be watching the Philadelphia Union next year. Because it would be a waste of time. It would be a waste of money. Spend more money just to watch one league? That makes no sense. But you're taking it off TV. You're taking it away from the people that are making the financial decisions. The financial decision to support your league. That's not going to bode well for you. Because people aren't going to pay extra money. Or I should say, people's parents aren't going to pay extra money for their kids to watch the sport. And my previous prediction was that in the next 10 years, before the Apple TV deal was announced, in the next 10 years, Major League Soccer would eclipse the National Hockey League in terms of TV ratings. That is never going to happen now. as long as MLS is not on cable television, and as long as Gen Z isn't the oldest generation, it's not going to happen. Because people aren't going to pay for their kids to watch something that they could just watch on TV, which in general is sports. I mean, what sounds more appetizing to you? If you're a parent of a child, what sounds better to you? Paying additional money to watch a sport that you haven't watched, or paying nothing to watch a sport that you've already been watching? So going forward, it seems as though Major League Soccer is heading for at least stagnation, and I think they're going to realize that. That's my prediction. I don't think MLS is going to grow anymore after the World Cup this year. It's going to be a lot like 2010, where, okay, cool. We did well at the World Cup. If they do, that's great. If they don't do it well at the World Cup, that's a different story. That's going to be awful for soccer in the United States. Even in Canada, soccer is growing in Canada. Canada just finished first in the CONCACAF. They're heading to the World Cup too. It's becoming like a big thing. Soccer is becoming a huge thing up there. And now you're going to take it away from them. You're going to take it off TSN. TSN. Where do you think people watch hockey games? TSN. What do you think's the first thing people see when they turn on the TV? TSN. A lot of the strategy with TV is getting people hooked to begin with. If you can turn on your TV and TSN is the first thing that comes up, but instead of the usual hockey broadcast, it's soccer, you might stick around for a little bit. If there's no hockey on that night, you're just turning on the TV because you were going to watch something else, but you turn on the TV and there's soccer on. You might get intrigued. You might sit back and watch it. And then ultimately, you might become an MLS fan. That's how you get new fans into the game. You can't survive off of one generation. It's why baseball is dying. Because baseball is a sport for the older generations. And the younger generations aren't as eager to watch baseball. So the sport isn't growing at all. The people that are getting older are not being replaced in the same age group by people that are willing to watch baseball, if you know what I'm saying. And that's because of the sport itself. That's why MLS had such a great opportunity. But I think that this is just going to kill it, which is really just a shame. And certain markets will thrive, like Atlanta, where it's already a staple, or like Los Angeles, where LAFC is becoming one of the biggest teams in America. They've eclipsed the Galaxy by this point, just based off of the past few years alone. I mean, especially since they don't have Ibrahimovic anymore, LAFC has been running Los Angeles. And now that they have Gareth Bale, that's another big thing. But other markets, smaller markets, like even New Jersey and New York, soccer isn't as popular up there. So you think that, you think the sport's even going to grow to begin with up there? If people can't watch it on TV? They already have so many other leagues to watch up there. So many other different teams. Over the summer, they've got the Yankees. When the Yankees aren't on, watch the Mets. It's rare that neither of them play at the same time. Either way, It's just a big mistake, I think, for MLS to be making this move. I think it's way too soon. And I hope that it doesn't mean that the league will decline, but I don't see any way that it continues to grow. And I hope other leagues don't follow in their footsteps, because it's going to take at least another 20 years, maybe 30, until streaming eclipses cable television. Because the people that are streaming games are not the ones usually making the financial decisions. It's usually the kids, while the parents watch whatever's on TV. And I don't think that these leagues that are moving closer to streaming and away from cable television fully understand that yet. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And that will be the last podcast episode of this season. We'll see if I start up doing podcasts again next season. I still haven't really decided on that yet. But yeah. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out, broskies.